Hi everyone, I'm David Yoteau. I am a French ambassador with a French accent. I started my career in IT world as a software test engineer a few years ago, and that's each my QA into my blog. Then I was a Ruby developer. I really liked Ruby. Easy to read, easy to write. The Ruby community is very tested-oriented, but I found the deployment not as simple as the rest of the language. It was very complicated for me to deploy Ruby code in production. I was looking for how to transform my Ruby code into a binary in order to deploy it more easily. For certain people, you can see Okra à l'époque, Okra, a gem to compile Ruby code. And then Crystal is announced, and I was really excited for Crystal. That's began my journey to Crystal, and I'm a Crystal software developer since 2017. My first opportunity, I had to write Crystal code in production. It was I work in innovation team at French Highway Society. In the innovation team, I had the freedom to think out of the box while the rest of the corporate using Java, only Java. The goal of the project was to put a web server on Intel Compute Stick, this little PC, in order to transform any HDMI screen into a screen controlled by HTTP. I was use Kemal for that, and other people in the company, they asked me to provide quality evidence, and in 2017 it's not simple. At this time, a simple test cover was enough for them. So Crystal Spec command did not provide it. I use the Crystal coverage shard and I contributed in order to publish and archive the result on Coverall.io at the time. Unfortunately, over the time, Crystal coverage is no longer maintained, but other tools appear. What about now, in 2023? What tool I use today for when I wrote CrystalConf? I will first tell you about tool I use in my PC. Then those that I use in CI, but sometimes the same as locally, but without a different usage, And finally, I use tool in production to monitor my application. I have plain a bonus if I have time, but I'm not sure. Let's start with my developer workstation. The first tool I use is evidently Crystal Spec. I use this. I'm lost. I use Crystal Spec with largely cover-minded. In complement, in addition of standard library, It also serves as a starting point for the other tools come later. I also use Crystal tool format to be sure of my formatting of my language. And since the 1.10, I use Crystal tool unreachable with my French accent to detect orphan code and clean them. Yeah. I also use external tool for the QA. I use the famous Amoeba. In addition to the compiler and the Crystal tool format, it allows me to check that I respect certain best practice. The next tool is my favorite, is Critic. Critic, yeah. Critic is a mutation testing tool. Does everyone see what mutation testing was? Yeah? A quick presentation. Initially, all CrystalSpec tests must be passed to launch Critic. He launched the first CrystalSpec to check all tests are passed. And he lists possible change in the code. Invert condition, invert then an else block, change a string in the code. He took one of these change and he applied and he relaunched CrystalSpec. If one of CrystalSpec failed, Critic is good, is passed, and inverts. If all tests passed, we have a mutant, and he failed. It's a little example with a mutation where we have a version in hard in the code, and the test is for this constant. I strongly recommend using it when working on a small project, but not on a monolith. It's very long, the execution time of mutation testing. You can take the execution time of one CrystalSpec and you launch, I don't have the word. Many times we have a mutation. So in a big application, that time is very long. Next tool I use Crystal Kharkov binding instead of Crystal coverage. My problem with Kharkov, it's not very good for calculate the coverage. In this example, the code has a cover, I'm sure of me, but he prints 66% of coverage. No, it's not a very good tool. When I was installed all these tools, I configure my editor. I use VS Code and Vim in the function of the workstation. I use VS Code on Windows and Vim on Linux. For both of them, I need Crystalline as LSP. Server is redundant in that. In VS Code, I use CrystalLang extension and set the path to the crystalline, and Crystal Amoeba extension for inputting Amoeba result into the editor. And in Vim, I use CrystalLang plugin. It's a very good plugin for that. And I use COC plugin, COC. Yeah, I don't. This is yeah. This is my configuration of COC. It's very simple, but it works. So, depending on the project and framework I use, I have to use a specific test framework. When I work on Lucky, I use LuckyFlow. It's a very good framework to end-user testing. It's the only one I know at this at the level of testing. I use CameraSpec for test Temal project, and I use very often Action Controller Spec Helper to my project, my actual project. So, well, since I'm a little lazy, writing test or code, then launching the test when the user tools tire me out. So I automated my dev workstation with a local CI. For the first tool, I use Guardian. It's a file system event listener. Search my word. It configures pairs of path pattern and a command to launch. So here, when a file with .here is modified, I launch with Aspect, and if you modify shard, I launch shard install. It's a great to be able to launch a command from a file system event, but I would like to chain the tools I presented and be able to stop the execution when one tool is in error. The solution I use is work. It's a local CI based on shell executor and Docker executor. Work allows to define a pipeline locally, and with his executor, it was close to the pipeline where I can write in other CI based on Docker, like GitLab CI or drone.io. For example, I can use a local executor for Amoeba, but I prefer use in local the same executor I use in remote CI, so I configure like that. When I'm on my set and work on a project, I often have the same reflex. I launch my editor, then I launch Guardian, and sometimes I launch Docker Compose to have external services like Postgre, Redis, LavinMQ. And for that, I use a process manager. With Lucky, I got into the habit to using Overmind written in Go, but for several months I have replaced Overmind by crocodile _CR. Yeah, I do. To read my profile. And this is my default profile I use on every project I work. So I opened my project and launch Crocodile Start to launch my editor, my database, and Guardian. This concludes the tour of my workstation. Let's move on to remote CI. In remote CI, I use the same tools, but in another way. Locally, we have standard output in the terminal, and we are not trying to preserve results. We're just reading them. Remotely, I will want to keep them and to make them readable and attached to a commit or a release. For the rest of the talk, I will only talk about GitLab. This is my job, CrystalSpec on GitLab. With CrystalSpec, we will modify its execution to add unit report. It's integrated by GitLab in a merge request by comparing main branch with the current branch. It's very useful. Yeah. For Crystal tool format, when I use in locally, I let them modify my code. In CI, I prefer fail. So I use the --check arguments. For Crystal tool unreachable, I open a pull request. This command not always respawn 0 exit code, so it's not a quality gate in a CI. I am thanks to Daniel Gilchrist. We gave me a solution on my GitHub issue to fail if unreachable find offhand code. For the coverage, I add a few arguments for fail if below I. Kirchhoff fail if coverage is not over 75% of coverage, and publish coverage in public. That's allow GitLab to publish the results coverage HTML reports on GitLab pages. It's my usage. In production, I use Raven shard to plug with Sentry. Sentry is an error catcher. It's very useful in production to have an error catcher. I choose Sentry for its integration in GitLab. Whenever an error is pushed by Raven, it appears in my GitLab, and accept them to an issue. A little anecdote about error catching. I had just deployed a building management solution in my client new building, and I see. And I had made an error when I configured the building, and the main user does not access to the application. The error were reported to me in a notification by Sentry. I fix it. Then I call the user who had the error to notify them of the fix. For this part, he was looking for, notify me for the error, for the anomaly. He was very pleasantly surprised that the problem was correct before he reported it. And it was very fun. The second tool I use in production is OpenTelemetry. I use OpenTelemetry instrumentation and API. I can identify the long and the most used processing in order to prioritize my optimization and my work. Now, am I confident to go into Crystal, production with Crystal? Me, I do, I say. But my clients see the interest, but they are afraid to not finding developer who write Crystal code. It is very difficult, only on the world, I think. About missing tools in Crystal for the QA. I think to do my performance tests, I continue to use Apache Benchmark or cases.io. I haven't found any tools written in Crystal for this need. It will be cool to have that. And if I want one which, it will be to have a QA site, services to integrate the result of Kerkov, Critic, Crystal Spec in the same site. By default, a better integration in existing offer like Codassi. Amoeba is integrated to Codassi, but not in other tools. Yeah. If I have deepest, I have no delay for the bonus. When I talk about some QA, I use the ISO norm 25010 about QA, and it defines a matrix with 4 level testing and 8 type category of tests. And I used that to see the place of these tools I used. Thank you for listening to me. And do you have a question?